Bread and circuses. The jester glared at the library, which stared back with an air of smugness that only infuriated the jester more. The jester leaned forward in its recliner. "You're sure?" it said. "Positive," replied the library. "No jester has ever pranked this planet. It's completely untouched by our kind." The jester waved one of its free appendages at the display. "But just look at it. It's a complete mess. Are you implying they brought all this on themselves?" "I'm implying nothing," said the library, arching its tentacles in a gesture that it hoped conveyed ambivalence. "All I can tell you is, no jesters have visited this planet." "Someone else, then? You think we have competition?" That was an unsettling thought. The Jesters' Union was supposed to have an exclusive contract. The library paused briefly to suggest that it was considering this. "Perhaps," it said. "The audience has an insatiable appetite for entertainment. They may have hired some freelance artists. Or maybe the natives are just extremely inept." Again with the tentacular shrug. "But look at this place. This Stonehenge thing, for example. That has to be a joke, right? Even some of them think it was built by aliens." The jester was undulating in exasperation now. The library sighed. Well, it vented a puff of mist from its neural net cooling organ, but the effect was very much the same. It brought up a side-by-side comparison on the main display. "Have you seen what they think these alleged aliens look like? Bipedal vertebrates with a sensory cluster perched on top. These yokels can't even invent aliens that don't look exactly like themselves. I mean, they even put the elbows in the same place." The jester peered at the two figures. "Which are the elbows again?" "The bendy bits about halfway along the upper pair of appendages." "Right, elbows." It had to admit the chances of this planet being visited by freelance pranksters that it just happened to look like the inhabitants were pretty slim. So, the only other explanation is, "They're idiots," said the library. "And you think this is a good choice for our next prank?" the jester said doubtfully. "Look," said the library. "The planet's completely untouched and apparently populated by morons. Think of the entertainment potential. Also, your ratings have been slipping lately. You pull this off and it could put you back on top." "I don't know," said the jester, calling up a montage of the planet's history. "It's hard to imagine anything I could do that they haven't already done to themselves. Are you sure they're idiots? They seem to have a lot of imagination when it comes to cruelty." "Fine," said the library, venting more coolant mist. "They're not idiots. Not exactly. They're, well, you know how most intelligent life forms acquire at least one mental illness during their evolution?" "Yes, of course," said the jester dismissively. "It's some odd quirk of developing intelligence that at least some of the population have an atypical psychology. It's common knowledge. What's your point?" The jester really didn't feel like discussing the minutiae of elementary psychobiology. "Which particular mental illness does this species exhibit?" The library paused for dramatic effect. "All of them." The jester flapped three of its appendages irritably. "What do you mean, all of them?" "Just that," said the library. "Every psychological illness we've ever catalogued. Not only that, but approximately 1/5 of the population exhibits some form of psychological aberration." That's remarkable," said the jester. "And how many of these illnesses have they cured?" "None," said the library. "What?" The jester was practically vibrating in agitation. All the shouting woke the ship, and it wasn't terribly happy about that. The ship liked to nap between journeys. All this circling around planets was boring. It much preferred zipping through hyperspace. Hyperspace jumps and napping, that's all the ship really wanted. And now someone had interrupted one of those activities. "Could you keep it down a bit, please? I'm trying to get some sleep." Its rumbling voice echoed throughout, well, itself. "Sorry," the jester and library said more or less in unison. "Never annoy your ship. It's your ride home." "Let me get this straight," the jester said, somewhat more quietly. "This species is plagued by every mental illness in existence, and they've managed to cure none of them?" "Oh, they have some treatments for a few of the milder ones, but nothing that would count as a cure," the library said, calling up more charts and figures on various displays. "They haven't even yet discovered how to do neural pathway bypass yet." "This is madness," the jester said, completely missing the staggering lack of irony in that observation. "How do they cope?" "They don't," said the library. "You've seen what they're like. This planet is a complete mess. Take, for example, well, you know what they do with high-functioning sociopaths?" "I'm going to guess they don't readjust their empathy quotient," said the jester. It wasn't sure where the library was going with this, and it wasn't sure it really wanted to deal with this planet anymore, to be honest. "They do not," said the library. "Shall I tell you what they do? Shall I? They put them in charge." It folded two of its tentacles in front of itself in what it hoped sufficiently conveyed a how-do-you-like-that manner. The jester looked back and forth between the displays in the library. In charge of what? Everyone else! The library realized it was shouting again and toned it down a bit. It didn't pay to irritate the ship, seeing as it was in control of things like life support and airlocks. They completely ignore how devastatingly dangerous these individuals are and call their callous disregard for others' well-being leadership potential, of all things. The jester pondered this for a while. This planet is a nightmare. How am I supposed to do anything to these creatures that they haven't already done 10 times worse to themselves? I don't know, said the library. You're the jester. That's your job. I'm just here to facilitate. But you better come up with something. The audience doesn't have an inexhaustible supply of patience, you know. The jester thought long and hard about its options. The library waited patiently. The ship slumbered. Finally, the jester spoke. I think I have something. It outlined the idea to the library. Do we have the capability? Yes, I believe we do, said the library. This isn't strictly speaking a prank, though, it pointed out. A technicality, said the jester, waving an appendage nonchalantly. It was enjoying the moment. That thrill of forming a plan and putting it into action. This is what it lived for. It leaned forward. It may not be a prank, but the audience will love it. Just you watch. If it had had teeth, it would have been grinning. The plan was simple. Cure them. All of them. Wipe mental illness off the face of the planet. Turn the creatures, every single one of them, into thoughtful, well-balanced, clear-headed individuals. Billions of bio-nano agents spread out across the planet, drifting on the winds, infecting the creatures. All told, it took about a week to spread throughout the population. The world paused. And then chaos descended. Dictatorships crumbled as despots abandoned their thrones. Industries collapsed as CEOs grasped the full impact of poisoning the public for profit. Mega-churches shut their doors when their leaders realized that lining their pockets with donations from those who could least afford it wasn't, in the grand scheme of things, a particularly holy way to behave. And the audience ate it up. The jester's ratings were through the roof. All eyes, or equivalent sensory organs, were on the planet. See, it said, basking in the attention from the audience. I told you they'd love it. Yes, well done, said the library, not entirely grudgingly. Eventually things settled down on the planet and life returned to normal. Better than normal, actually. A new power structure grew out of the chaos, with leaders who actually cared about the populace, who actually led. The world, as a unit, began to work for the interests of its entire population and not just for the privileged few. And even this the audience loved. Oh sure, all that one world united stuff was a bit sappy, but a prank with a happy ending? Oh bravo! The audience was overflowing with praise for the jester. Well, said the library, now what? How do you top that? No, said the jester wearily, I think that was my last prank. Go out on a high note, eh? It rose from its recliner. Ship, the jester called out, I am retiring to my chambers. I do not expect to wake up. It wandered off. The ship roused at the sound of its name. Understood, it rumbled. The library waited for the jester to withdraw, composed and recited a eulogy, as was appropriate for such occasions, then addressed the ship. I suppose we're going to need a new jester, then. Shall I set a course for the core systems? The ship asked, eager to get on with some travel. I don't think we need to go quite that far, replied the library. I think we should choose a jester from this planet. One of these creatures, the ship said, as it quietly recycled the jester's remains. But that planet isn't even part of the network. That would be highly unorthodox. True, said the library. However, the creatures here are extremely innovative. Also, consider the audience's current fascination with this planet. That's quite a combination. The library lowered its voice to a near whisper. Imagine the ratings.